placed on your chairs a summary of what I spoke about earlier, of the different forms of generalization, with some guidelines. Oh, all right. Some of you are missing more than that. Or you can hang on if other people need them. So, a handout give you a little more idea of the different ways of forming generalizations, what kind of change processes go with what kind of generalization or belief, and a summary of creating a new conviction, that what you want to do is identify a limiting self-concept you wish to change. And as I'm saying, you're going to be doing a lot of work on self-concept with Steve in the large sense. I'm talking about these little things that we let go by. As I say, that we're not creative, or we're not athletic, or we're not tenacious, or other things that certainly are not true when you take the whole fabric of our lives, but because of accidents of generalization. In other words, you had a number of instances in a row where you developed the generalization, well, I guess I don't have that skill, when in fact that's not the case at all. The thing is that you accidentally ran a convincer strategy. Now we want to be more deliberate about it, because you're to find a counterexample to this idea, and what you want to do is search related contexts and inside larger contexts. Now what I mean by that is related context. Somebody says, I'm not romantic. Then you say, well, tell me about dates you've gone on. Tell me about what you and your spouse do. And you find the moment when they were romantic, and you go, that. And they go, that's romantic? And you help them relabel it. You go, yes. Walking down the beach hand in hand, and turning to the ocean, and the sun's going down, and whispering things, this is romantic. So then you mark that moment. Another way to do it is to look inside larger contexts.
That's actually really good language.
Looking inside a larger context, I gave an example before of someone who has taken a whole area of their life and said, well, that's when I'm a housewife, or that's when I'm on vacation. But when you look inside that, the person may have learned water skiing. As I said, in the case of raising kids, you've negotiated with recalcitrant and disagreeable people that are just smaller. So there are a number of skills in there that you can relate back to being creative, or you can relate back to the other quality that you want to engender. Find a sufficient number of incidences. Now, what's a sufficient number of instances? That's going to be for them. For some people, it's 3rd times a charm. For others, they're going to need more. That the explorer accepts as examples of the desired quality. In one of the groups, a person says, well, I'm not very good with computers. Now, you could hold to the content of computer, but what makes better sense is to say, well, a computer is an example of what? What's an example of? A technical skill, exactly. It's an example of a machine. It's an example of an electronics thing. So you can take any of those larger categories and you could say it's a technical skill. And you could begin to say, what are examples of technical skills? And go through different contexts and situations and find them. You could take, it's an example of learning how to work with a machine. Find different examples of machines. You could find that it's an example of electronic devices. Find other examples of learning electronic devices. So, when the person agrees, yes, those are examples of that, then arrange these examples, if you're doing it to timeline, in order, or just verbally get the person to have accessed them. That's the thing, if you just name them, it's not going to have the effect. Remember, words don't change people, experience does. So they get the experience of that one incident. They get the experience of the next incident. They get the experience of the next, and you're watching them access those experiences in rapid succession so that there's a sufficient number in that amount of time that they will build a new conviction. This, of course, is known as convincer strategies, convictions. What if the person says, yes, it is the number of examples, but also the amount of time? Then you do Ericksonian pseudo-orientation in time. Imagine as you're going through these examples that a month has passed, and another month, and another month, and the fall, and now it's winter time, and you've done this all through the fall and winter. And as you look back on it now, what do you realize about yourself? Right? In other words, you can verbally utilize language and tense to get the person to experience that stretch of time now. This is essentially what storytelling does. You're just being very deliberate about it in terms of building up the generalization. Then, of course, you want to test for the conviction. Do they now believe they can be athletic? Do they now think of themselves as somebody who's creative? Because after all, that's what you're going for. And if it doesn't, what do? You go back and do it again, but this time really make sure that they are vividly associating into each of the examples. Doing it dissociated is not going to produce the generalization. Remember, it was produced by accident by the number of incidents they had where they went to the dance and they didn't dance, they went to the dance and they didn't dance, they went to the dance, they didn't dance, and they decided they didn't know how to dance. But it was an accident. And it can be changed. This also, for those of you that do modeling, is a particular advantage because you can do this with yourself. That is, if you need to relieve yourself of some attitude or idea in order to take on some model that you want to, some exemplar you want to model, and you find, well, this exemplar believes they're very creative, or this exemplar is very tenacious, or something like that, then you can find those moments in your life, do your own bit of timeline work, and make it available to yourself so that then you have that quality, those reference experiences, to bring to the modeling. So it helps you in rapid acquisition of the model. Sure.
One other thing
Sure, Paul.
I want to keep clear in my mind that the transition from being good at working on a computer to machines.
Mm-hmm.
The person that's the guide would necessarily make this connection and not say a computer is a machine. Can you tell me examples of times when you work with machine?
You could say it that way. What you're looking for is confirmation in the explorer. You could say it, it seems to me that a computer is just another electronic device. And you look, if they agree, then of course they said, yeah, I categorize it the same way. You're implying, you're offering that. They've got to try on that category for a moment when you say that. So they try it on and they go, yeah. Then you go, done. So give me other examples of electronic devices, tape recorders, VCRs. Just tell me, so which ones can you use?
Okay. So then I take it that if that comes up, it's recommended to elicit that from the explorer in that.
Well, I would recommend eliciting it, but keep in mind, this person is stuck about this, and they've already categorized it. So in a sense, if the person says, well, I'm not athletic, and you say, well, what are examples where you were athletic? Even though you are looking for counterexamples to that, they're unlikely to find them. They might say, well, there was once a time, perhaps, maybe. But since they're in the state of mind and in the conviction of being unathletic, your job is to help them to relabel that in a way. So you think, well, what's a related context? So you'd say, well, what do you do on vacation? And you just start playing around with this idea where you're looking for situations where they would need to be physically active, but you realize they haven't labeled it that way. Or you take the example again, I take the example of the housewife. You get a bolder housewife. They've got these devices. You've seen them. They got the bicycle wheels on them and the carriage in the middle and the top. And you can race at like 60 miles an hour with these things, with the baby inside, but they don't think of themselves as athletic. Well, okay, wait a minute. You could take that out as an example of where the person, and they go, well, yeah, you're right, and then they relabel it. And then once you've got those examples, then you can see that the person says, well, if you had all of these and you thought of this one and this one and this one and this one and this one, and you made sure they tried on each of them, then what have they done? They've just taken maybe 6 examples in a row.
Yeah.
Then they're going to build a new conviction. Yeah.
So one way of doing that is to chunk up in terms of classification.
Yes, one way to get out of the content is to go to a larger category, yes. And also,
Is that what you've written there? Inside larger categories?
well, you search in related contexts, or inside, search in a larger context where the person doesn't break it down. Like, I went to school. Well, how did you get to school? Well, I rode my bike miles each way. Tell me more about that. Because they were thinking about it as school. It was an undifferentiated category. Or vacation. Or, well, it's just my job. What do you do in your job? Well, I talk to 100 people a day. It was like over here with Ron, and Ron saying, well, I'm not really good at convincing people, and then a few moments later he's going, I can get all sorts of people to come in a bar. Well, getting people to come in a bar is different in his mind, but after a little play with that, he goes, well, yeah, I guess that is an example of me, having tenaciousness and go for it and making things happen. Well, speaking of tenaciousness and go for and making things happen, we have a little summary game here. We have a little, I invite you to play with me. Now, you're going to need to get into pairs for this. So you might want to get into your pair right now. So look around, find a pair. Okay? Okay, now we're going to make somebody an A and somebody a B. I'd like them to figure out who they are right now. All right, now, A's. Okay, I want you to reach in your wallet or your purse. The A's. Yeah? Okay. Pull it out. Okay. Good, all right. And I want you to peel off $5. I want you to give it to B. All right. Okay, B's, it's yours. Wasn't this a fun game? Okay. A's, let's find out what we've learned the last couple of days. In fact, let's find out what we've learned about metaprograms and about strategies and about influence and about leverage. Is without violence, without threats, is to convince B to give it back. Oh, did I mention you have about 5 minutes?
Give it to me.
Now, before we do, I just want to remind you that you do know a few things. Yeah. Well, they're here somewhere. You do know a few things about metaprograms that might have an effect. You do know a few things about strategies, about criteria. Allow me to invite you to take a breath. This is the A's. The B's, we don't care what you do. The A's, take a breath and drop your eyes down into the kinesthetic and exhale. And then roll your eyes over to the auditory and say, I wonder how soon I'll be surprised to find myself using my skills in new ways. Or words to that effect. In other words, you go down, over to auditory, all the way up to visual remembered, over to visual construct and down. And if you'd like to introduce a little language into that, you can go down and you wonder how soon I'll surprise myself with new skills and new ways of getting my money back. You've got about 5 minutes left. Have some fun.